I am so excited to introduce to you a phenomenal young woman, Ms. Christian Herald, who exemplifies excellence in all that she engages in, from advocating for enhancing the lives of young women of color as a fellow of the Young Women's Advisory Council at the Washington Area Women's Foundation, to leading workshops for aspiring leaders alongside the National Women's Law Center. Ms. Christian currently attends the University of Richmond, where she has established herself as a prominent student leader in just 2 years, might I add. Within the past year, Ms. Christian co-organized a silent march and a student-led discussion for survivors of sexual assault, garnering the attention and support of hundreds of student, alumni, faculty, and staff, resulting in one of the largest demonstrations on the campus of the University of Richmond in recent history. Ms. Christian is also the founder and editor-in-chief of Counterculture magazine, a publication dedicated to social justice and advocacy. And her work does not stop here. She also serves as an appointed position of the president of Black Student Alliance and the only freshman to assume this role. Outside of academics, Ms. Christian currently serves as a member of the Young Scholar Program for African American Policy Forum, where she engages in research regarding the welfare of Black women and girls. It is evident that Ms. Christian's dedication and passion for policy has led her to this path, and we are excited to see the work that she continues to do. So please give her a virtual round of applause as we welcome Ms. Christian Herald as the keynote speaker for the Summer Academy Online.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Sierra. I really appreciate it. Hello, everyone. My name is Christian Herald, and I'm honored and extremely excited to be your keynote speaker at the 2022 closing ceremony for the Summer Academy for Policy Leadership and Public Service Online. And first and foremost, I would like to congratulate you all for the amazing work that you've been doing over the past few weeks. I don't know if you saw me in the chat, but I actually watched all the Capstone presentations, and I was just blown away by the depth and knowledge that you all presented. I mean, you took extremely complex topics about imperialism, gender equity, climate change, LGBTQ+ rights, and made them into incredibly digestible, really amazing presentations. So you all should be incredibly proud of that. And though your graduation and participation in this program may seem small, this is a huge deal. Instead of kicking back and becoming the summer vacation couch potato that all of us have been at one point or another, every single one of you, by being a part of SAO, has demonstrated your commitment to making your communities and the world a better place through policy awareness, change, and advocacy. You've dedicated your time off to doing something incredibly meaningful and powerful, and that should be commended. Furthermore, programs like these are crucial to developing and shaping your skills as young leaders and eventual policy shapers, makers, and advocates. And you all should be incredibly proud of yourselves. Congratulations to you all, and a little round of applause. I'd like to begin by telling you all a story. When I was about 9 years old, I initiated my first protest. It was small. It consisted of only one person, myself, and was not over a major culture war or large societal issue like mass incarceration or wealth inequality. This is how it happened. My 4th grade class was often subjected to periods of silent reading, or where we were forced to read our book of the month while our teacher caught up on emails and played computer games. For this month, our book was Cynthia Ryland's Every Living Thing, a seemingly innocuous tale about various animals and the importance of taking care of all creatures. As myself and my classmates read the book, I came upon a peculiar passage. The author, describing the supposed misunderstood protagonist, mentioned that she had a prejudice against those who weren't white and the same religion that she was, Presbyterian. At that point, I immediately glanced around and saw that none of my classmates were as horrified as I was by this book. They continued to be good students and silently read while my teacher sat at her desk, aimlessly scrolling on her computer. I immediately went from shocked to enraged. Why did no one seem to care that the person in this story we were supposed to see as flawed, but eventually as a good person, was racist? How would everyone, including my teacher, brushed over this fact? I realized that I could no longer sit idly by. I had to do something. So, as all 9-year-olds do, I stood up and declared that I refused to read the rest of Every Living Thing because the main character was racist. I then marched straight out of the classroom, leaving behind a shocked teacher and confused classmates. My one-woman protest had begun and ended approximately 5 minutes later when I became bored after wandering the halls and came back to my classroom. I tell you this story for a few reasons. First, I think it's a pretty good way to introduce myself and who I am. Activism has always been ingrained at the core of who I am since I was a kid. And I'd like to think that though I've always had a strong sense of justice, this is when I truly put the act in activism. Though it was over something that I now would probably consider minor in the large scheme of things, I now know, of course, that racist characters can sometimes be an intentional and even important part of literature. It still demonstrates a large part of my identity. In many ways, I'm proud of my 9-year-old self for taking a stand when no one else was willing to. But that brings me to the second part of why I told you this story. It shows the value that in the future will be the single most important factor to creating change and making our society a more just and equitable place for all. It is a value that will be tested, challenged, and at times confronted, but it is one that is essential for us to have as young leaders: resistance. As a Black woman, I have always had a trickier relationship with resistance. On one hand, resistance is essential to my survival as someone who copes with oppression through both my gender and my race. Resistance for many people over the years is the reason that I can sit anywhere I like on a bus, attend the predominantly white institution I go to, and vote for the elected officials who I want to. As a 9-year-old, I resisted the notion that I should have to idly read a book with a character that was racist and embrace her as a benevolent figure. On the other hand, resistance is dangerous, particularly in a country like ours, which often violently suppresses anything that resists its oppression. A part of that story from when I was 9 that I have not mentioned is that though I resisted many times that year, it often resulted in discipline. I was in the principal's office more times in the 4th grade than at any other time in my life. Not resisting in many ways is easy, keeping your head down and pushing towards your goals, whatever that may be. Though resistance is ingrained into who I am, I've been socialized to be wary of it, to reject it, to accept that which is not just. And I'm sure many of you have found yourself in a similar dilemma. Many leaders do. The continuous struggle between doing what is right and self-protection is one that is often not discussed, but happens at every stage and phase of leadership. Though today, we must resist. A willingness to accept inequality and oppression is the goal of many legislators and other powerful individuals. They want us to not resist. And though it is important to practice self-care, vulnerability, and love, in the face of adversity and suppression, we must remain resistant to all that is unjust. In an era in which we rapidly see our hopes, our dreams, and our way of life being forcefully taken from us, we must, absolutely must, resist. There has perhaps been no time when it has been more crucial to resist. All across the country, we are being faced with civil rights protection rollbacks on a scale of which has not been seen since the end of Reconstruction. We are witnessing the rapid and horrific rise of neo-fascists and theocratic individuals and ideologies in both our state and federal government. Millions of children and other vulnerable people live in poverty. The coronavirus pandemic, though officials have declared it a battle now won, has cut short the lives of over 1 million people in our country alone. The student debt deficit has exceeded $1 trillion, the majority of which is disproportionately carried by Black and low-income borrowers. Median rent in New York City last month was $4,000, the highest amount ever seen on record. In some parts of the country, the price of gas is more than our abysmal and unlivable federal minimum wage. Despite our efforts, we lack a social safety net. And now, in the midst of tragedy after tragedy, the death of George Floyd, the pandemic, the January 6th insurrection, everything, more and more individuals are continuing to slip through the cracks. Every day, a new headline comes out and shakes the world. And just when we think it'll stop shaking, it shakes even harder. Me telling you all of this should not make you sad, however, or make you lose hope. It should enrage you. It should enrage you, and it should most crucially empower you. The time for change, unlike some may think, isn't in 2030 or 2050. The time is now, and you are a crucial part of this equation. I know as a young person, it can be difficult to believe that you have any sort of power or agency over the decisions that affect your everyday life. We live in a world that consistently and overwhelmingly favors the opinions, attitudes, and cultural beliefs of those who are far older than us. Ingrained in our laws is the persistent notion that young people's voices are not valued. You cannot run for president of the United States until you are 35 years old. You must be 18 to vote, despite many of us paying taxes, working, and performing other civic duties since we were far younger. And when youth can vote, we face some of the highest rates of voter suppression. The current Senate is the oldest in recorded history, with the average age being 64 years old. The message is clear. Youth voices are not wanted. Youth voices are not valued. Youth voices are not necessary. But that shouldn't discourage you either. Why do you think there are current movements to block the teachings of progressive ideologies and frameworks like critical race theory? Why do you think there is a movement to have us not say gay? Why do you think that textbooks are being censored? It's because they know that empowered and educated youth are dangerous youth. That our generation threatens to usurp all forms of oppression that are being tossed our way. They're wrong about young people, and they know they're wrong. In short, they know that youthful resistance is the most powerful resistance. So the question becomes, how can you resist? As we have just seen with the egregious and unconstitutional reversal of Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey, we know that policy has the ability to change the lives of millions, for the better or the worse. And thus, in these troubling times, we must understand that while policy has gotten us into this situation, it will be one of the greatest solutions to free us. And that is why we need you to continue doing the necessary work that you have begun doing in SAO Online, shaping, advocating, and creating effective, helpful policy. Now, I'm going to be honest. I was more than halfway through writing the speech when I received the announcement that Roe had been overturned. For days, I struggled to continue writing. How can I sit here and tell my generation that the answer is policy, when for much of our lives, we have faced a crisis of legitimacy in regards to policy? How can I sit here and smile and say that policy is the key to absolving us of oppression, when it also has the power to cause so much destruction? How can I encourage you to become policymakers when leaders on both sides have fooled us with false promises and guarantees that they refuse to legislate? I spent many hours staring and re-editing my draft in an attempt to avoid writing what I largely felt may have been a lie. But then there came some hope. To paraphrase the words of one of my favorite congressional progressives, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, it is no longer about simply picking individuals from a certain party, or who come from a certain family, or who have years and decades of political experience. It's about pushing better people into these offices. It is no longer enough to be simply of the right party. It is about being of the right character. And this same logic, I realized, can be applied to both elected officials and those who influence and create policy more broadly. And thus, I realized it is not merely about becoming a policy maker. It is about becoming a policy maker because you are you. When you enter the world of policy, you all are bringing with you your diverse life experiences, your immaculate character, your morals, and your dedication to serving your community. I realized that I would only be wrong to encourage people who do not have the slightest ounce of integrity to become involved in policy. To put it simply, when AOC discussed placing those who are better into realms where policy is shaped and created, she meant people like you. It is not only policy that is the answer to resisting oppression, it is the individual who you are. So how can you resist? First, get involved, organize, vote, and speak out against policies that seek to destroy communities. Uplift policies that seek to change our systems for the better. Get out in the streets and protest. Write, call, and email your local, state, and federal representatives. Volunteer with organizations that do the crucial work of researching and identifying solutions through policy for our society's most pressing issues. Help people in your community register to vote and educate younger generations about the importance of voting during all elections, not just during the presidential cycle. Next, educate yourself and others. I recently finished reading Becoming Abolitionists by Derica Purnell, which explores the author's personal journey and advocacy work in her case for police and prison abolition. In the book, Purnell emphasizes the importance of educating yourself and those around you about the current nature of our political climate and the issues we face. Political education is one of the most important gifts that we can bestow upon ourselves and the people we love, as it allows us to better understand and recognize the oppression that persists deep within our society. So educate yourself. Read books, academic articles, and online writings that broaden your scope of knowledge regarding the issues facing our society. Elect to take classes that discuss issues regarding race, gender, and sexuality. And more crucially, have conversations, though that may be difficult, with the people in your lives about such issues. Take the time to educate others in both big and small ways. Though some of these actions may be small and personal, while others are large and reach a wider audience, they are all working towards the same goal: resisting oppression while working towards a more equitable and just society. As I said before, empowered and educated youth are the most dangerous youth. By completing SAO online with Policy Pathways, you're already well on your way to becoming part of the solutions that we desperately need. So while I personally would not recommend staging your own one-man protests in your fourth grade classroom, I think that can cause more trouble than it's actually worth. I hope that you all can continue to resist as we endure through these difficult times and remain grounded in the hope of your communities that you have all around you. Looking to the future, I know that it can at times seem scary and very bleak. I have been there. But the knowledge that we have people like you who are committed to standing against injustice makes it appear far more bright. Congratulations, and thank you to you all.